Definitely the city of brotherly love,
Oh,
sister.
for sure. Oh, for sure. But I'm from the hood, though. No, I don't deny that. Okay, I do not deny that. I love being black. I love being from the hood. I wouldn't change.
Philly's where I am from. You are tuned into the Philly Culture Podcast. If you have not already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you do not miss out on any of the episodes. I am your host, Tanja Morris, the founder of Sisters with the Agenda and Your Culture Connection. And we have Kaima Akbar, the co-host of Urban Queens. And we have came together to put on and shine a little light on Philly. The Philly Culture Podcast is here to talk about our upbringing in the city of Philadelphia and how it has birthed our hustle. Philly has some great creators, entrepreneurs, and community leaders who have been creating cultures in the city of Philadelphia for years. So stay tuned and check out some of the great people we have. And if you missed out on any episodes, make sure you go back and follow. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do so now.
Right, we are back for another episode of the Philly Culture Podcast, and I am Tanja Morris, the founder of Sisters with the Agenda, the co-host here on the Philly Culture Podcast and the Culture Connection. And I'm here with my co-host.
Hey guys, it's me, Kaima Akbar, the owner and creator of Urban Queens. And we have our special guest today, Miss Rhonda. Tell us about yourself. Introduce yourself.
Hi everybody, my name is Rhonda Boyd, and I am a licensed professional counselor, and I also am the owner of Journey From Within, which is an LLC that provides mental health services to individuals, couples, and family, and I'm also the CEO of the Blended Journey, which also provides therapy, but it has a specialty that we focus on blended families, which is the new buzzwords for step family.
Okay. Nice. So tell us about your upbringing in Philly and how it, birthed your hustle and shaped your hustle.
So I grew up in the bottom, 38th and Reno.
Okay.
And I am the youngest and the only girl.
Oh, wow.
And I have two older brothers.
Okay.
And so just growing up there was a community. I mean, I grew up in the era, so I'm a date myself. I'm 54.
Love to show the different generations.
Yes. And so I grew up in a culture where everybody could discipline you, right? Like you do something, you got in trouble when you got caught, but you also got in trouble again when your parents
Right.
That's right. And so the people that I grew up with, they were like family. You know, it's like that auntie that's not really your auntie.
Right.
They're your cousins, but they're not really your cousins. So that's kind of how I grew.
Family.
Yes. But I didn't have an older sister. And so my mom felt a need for me to have some type of positive role model.
Okay.
And so she got me into this big sister, big brother program through YGS, which was called Young Grace Society.
Okay.
And
Was that a South Philly thing?
no, that's the bottom thing.
The bottom.
I said West
Okay.
Philly.
Okay, right.
I'm sorry.
West Philly is
Tell us the bottom of West Philly. Okay.
Yes.
West Philly
Yes.
wasn't my territory. West Philly, South Philly wasn't my territory. I'm an uptown girl.
Okay, so the bottom and West
Very
Philly.
good
Yes. I'm like on a, I don't know directional, but like I'm near the zoo, but when
Yeah.
you walk across this, go across that
The bridge, yeah.
and then it's like
Mantua
Mantua
section,
Avenue,
yeah.
like right at the Mantua, if you walk in towards Market Street, my block was the next block after
Okay.
that.
So that's the bottom.
Yeah.
Yes, educate me. There's so many different sections of Philly. I'm telling
Yes.
you, even though you can grow up in Philly,
The bottom was represented.
Yes, we were. Yes, we were. And
Yeah.
so I got in this program. I think I was about 12, and believe it or not, we still have a relationship today. Her and I. And so so I started in this program, and then out of result of that program, I became a cheerleader.
Okay.
And so we cheered, at the games and all of that kind of stuff, the little, what do they call it? Little league, with football and stuff like that.
Pop Warner League.
No, they didn't have Pop Warner.
Not
I might have got a trophy and a trip to Disney World.
If you was about-
They still do that though. They still do the trips to Disney.
I know,
Mrs.
but
School.
I would have liked that. But anyway. So then, so I started out at Belmont Elementary, and then I went to junior high school up at Salisbury. We called that the prison on the hill. And it was at 48th and Fairmont, I believe that's what it is. It's a charter school now, and I think it's called Maya something like
Okay,
that.
I think I
Yeah.
know what you're
That's
talking
crazy
about.
because somebody was just asking me if there's still junior high schools in Philly, and there's not.
There's not? No,
No,
so
most
they
of them are middle schools that are connected with
high
high school,
schools,
or the
okay.
middle schools connected with the elementary school.
right?
It's not
So no
actually its own
individual-
experience, which they
Really? Wow, I didn't realize that.
So I think some of the things that were major in my life growing up, I remember that there was 3 things that happened when I was like a teenager. And so the first thing, and I don't know the chronological order, but it kind of like is the reason why I am who I am and why I do what I do. So the first one that I remember, we had a childhood friend, his name was Nate. And he was playing on the train tracks across the bridge, which is like 40th Street. And he got electrocuted and he died.
Oh, wow.
And another one was another childhood friend. Her name was Samina. She was murdered. And then we had another friend, and he wasn't necessarily, he was like an older brother. He was friends with my brother. And his name was Babe. And he was murdered.
Oh, wow.
But what I know today, I didn't know it as a child. Like the adults around us didn't talk about it, right? It was like you don't talk about that kind of stuff, right? You know, like you just keep moving, you just keep going, you don't talk about it. And I also feel like they didn't talk about it because they didn't know what to do with our emotions, right? And so most of us want to fix stuff so that we don't open up a door that we don't feel like we can fix. And so I realized early on that mental health, I won't say I realized it, but I realized it through my own tragedy, that mental health plays, it's an important thing. And so I never forget, and I'm going to move a little bit forward. So I was in my 20s, and I was working at this job called Melmark, and Melmark was all the way out in Newtown Square. And I had a supervisor who, she kind of noticed that, you know, I was a little cracker. Need a little help, you know, like got a good heart, but you know, you can tell she's been through some stuff and need to process it. And so she took me to 49th and Wyalusing, it's called Community Council, to do an intake. And she was like, I think you would benefit from therapy. And I just was like, at the time, I was like, oh, okay. But then she didn't look like me and they didn't look like me. So I was like, I'm not going to do this.
Right.
So it took me almost like 25 years before I actually started the process.
Wow.
And
So at this time, you weren't in the social services field.
I was in like, yes, because I was working at a home. It was Melmark, and they had the people who lived there, they were, I don't know, the new intellectually challenged. That's the new word. And so, yes, I was in the field, but not really in tune to, it was a job.
Right.
That was a job. I was like, well, I got baby. I didn't work.
That's the thing.
I don't want to go on that, you know. I mean, like, I can't be on welfare all my life. So after that, I just was out here in life, you know, and just doing stuff, living life on life terms. You know, had a boyfriend who was a drug dealer, and he was getting money. A lot of it, you know, and I was reaping the benefits. And then when my daughter, I finally got pregnant, and my daughter was like 2 months. And at this time, it was a new law. It was in '89. And the law was whoever house it is, that person gets charged. And so I wasn't home all day. I was out. And they raided our house. Well, my house, because my name was on the lease. And he said that it wasn't his. And I was so out. Yeah, he said it wasn't his. So I was just like, oh, okay. Well, y'all planted it, because that's what they say on TV. So I was sticking to that story. It wasn't right. Because I wasn't a ride or die chick. Like, that wasn't mine. But, you know, he said it wasn't his. I believed him. And I was locked up for 6 months. And that sister, because this full circle, that sister that I told you about, the big sister, she came and she took care of my daughter while I was in jail.
Oh my gosh.
And so I never forget, I got out on September the 18th. Oh, and that sister paid my bill.
You said 6 months?
I was in there for 6 months. It felt like 60 years.
That's it.
And he had the money to get me out, and he didn't come and get me out.
They don't be riding, sisters. I'm just gonna say that. Okay. It's a culture. And it's like, growing up, you want the hustler, you want the rough and tough guy, but they don't be
There was a high commodity. I mean,
you better get the one with the benefits.
Right,
and the
exactly.
pension. I'm trying to tell
Bus
you.
drive.
The culture will tell you it's cute,
but it's
really
not cute. I'm
It's
telling
not
you. I've been through it. It's not cute. And I wish I can say that was the only time that I got locked up. But I didn't. It was 5 years later. He came home.
The same guy?
Yeah, baby daddy.
Yeah,
the baby daddy.
Keep it consistent.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it 100.
Right.
So
It
baby
is what
daddy,
it is,
yes,
right.
he came home, and we wasn't even in relations. But he asked me to get a bike in his name, and I got the bike in his name. He called me and like a little later and said that the bike got stolen. And boo boo the fool. I was like, oh, okay. He was like, you need to call and report it to the insurance company. So I called and reported to the insurance company. He was real good. Come to find out, he was involved in a shootout with the housing authority cop, and they had the bike in their possession. So I committed insurance fraud.
Oh my God.
So yes, so I spent a lot of time being angry, being bitter, not trusting myself,
Right.
not trusting men, and then I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired, because they used to laugh at me and say I would get mad when the wind blew. Like that's how angry.
The toleration was.
That's how angry I was. I felt
Over,
like
right.
my emotions was like a night, like the 4th of July night. And I wanted something different, because now I had a daughter. But I didn't know what different looked like, because that what was happening. Not people getting locked up, but like people having drug dealer boyfriends,
Right, that was
having
right.
babies. Like that was my
The
reality.
culture, right,
Yes, that was the culture.
Right, yeah.
And so I never forget, my kindergarten teacher saw something in me, and she started exposing me to stuff. Like she told me, she got me connected to the NAACP. She started taking me on trips. I used to be a part of this. It was called it was a black ski club. They were called the Blazers. Like she just started exposing me to stuff outside of the hood, and that made me realize that it was a possibility.
Yeah.
But I had to do the work. But it was
Right.
a possibility.
That part.
Yes. So I thought doing the work was just me going to school, getting some degrees, and then getting, like a more professional job. But I was still like not emotionally sound, right? Or emotionally well.
Okay.
And I couldn't like really maintain relationships, not even just with men, but just with women. Like I wasn't trusting what I saw and what I was experiencing. And I feel like I was also, I also was accepting unacceptable behavior from some women, because some women, like I shared with them, they knew what I was going through, and then they was coming through back doors, hooking up with the men, like that kind of stuff.
And it's crazy, not to interrupt you, but we always hear about the Philly culture of young men role modeling what they see. But you kind of talking about the experience from the female side that a lot of people don't talk about. The experience of having a drug dealer boyfriend, being a baby mom, going through these things, and we kind of normalize these things as if, okay, this is how life is supposed to be, because this is what we saw around us. Even the friendships,
those are the options.
Your friends, they my girlfriends, and they gonna do some behind closed shit and stuff. And even the anger, just not being able to process the anger, and you see that a lot. And you looking at these parents, or you looking at different people, you go in the stores and you're like, what they so mad for? Because the things of personal development, therapy, and all those things are not normalized, and this is what you see that becomes a big part of the Philly culture.
Absolutely. And I feel like I know I had a tendency before I did the work, to look at people in my same situation and be like, what's wrong with them? But what I know to be true today is nothing wrong with them, but something happened to them to make them act the way they act.
Cause and effect.
Yes.
Pretty
And
much.
so I just got tired. I got tired of being around people who was taking from me and not depositing. I got tired of putting myself in situations where I really wasn't loving myself.
Right.
And so I want to say I was about I guess it was about 27 was the first time I started going to therapy. And this person looked like me. It was a man. Actually, my pastor at the time, I was telling him some of the things that I was struggling with, and he said he had somebody for me to talk to.
Okay.
So I started talking to him, and I started to feel better. I started to realize like those childhood issues, because I feel like a lot of people of color anyway, because that's all I am, and that's all I can speak about,
Right.
is that we, it's either things that happen in our childhood or there are family of origin issues that show up, right? And mine was both. And so I wanted better. I just didn't want to stay stuck. I didn't want to keep having drug dealer boyfriends. And I had a daughter, so I definitely wanted better for her.
Right.
Even at times I couldn't want it for myself. I wanted it for her. And so I started doing better. And I felt like that was the first round, because my situation was like an onion. It was layers. So it wasn't a one round of therapy that did it for me, but it was the first round that kind of got me catapulted on my journey. And so, you know, like I did that, then I started doing some work, and I didn't know it at the time, but I could look back and see how like people just kind of gravitated towards me, like with their stuff, you know, and like really felt like I was a safe place for them to be able, you know, to talk about whatever and not be judgmental, right? Because I wasn't in a position to judge nobody. I had too much that I was going through myself and that I was carrying, and so. But it didn't register to me that I would be a therapist, so I decided that I wanted to go to a nursing route, but I couldn't even balance my checkbook, so that wasn't gonna work. So I went the teacher route, and I got a degree, an undergrad degree in elementary education. But even though I did all of that, I still didn't know my worth, and I didn't know my value, and I didn't know how to ask for help. I walked away from a career because I couldn't pass the test and I didn't know how to ask for help.
Right.
And so I told myself a story, because I think we always tell ourselves a story, whether the stories are good and bad. And the story that I told myself, oh, this must not be for me.
Right.
And so I started working in nonprofits and working in like urban areas, doing like after school programs or preschool and things of that nature. And I did that for several years. But the money wasn't enough. So I decided I was gonna go back to school. Tried various schools, various programs, and I'm gonna tell you, I don't even remember how I got to Chestnut Hill in the counseling program. But that's where I found myself. And I thought I was going for the profession, but I actually learned so much about myself in the process, because they was talking about some stuff that was like, oh, that makes sense. They was talking about attachment theory. I was like, wow, that's what's going on. And so, like, as a result of doing that, I started doing therapy, and didn't even really feel like when I first started that I was good at it. But I had this mentor. I'll never forget. I had a couple of mentors, so I'm gonna talk about the first one. His name was Bill Mayer. And I feel like I need to talk about him because he took a chance on me.
Okay.
I had an interview with him when I first graduated, and he wanted to hire me so bad. But it was a job where you had a partner, and a partner that I would have been partnered with, he wanted to hire somebody he knew, which makes sense, right? But he said that if a position ever becomes available, I'm gonna keep you in mind.
Right.
It was 2 years later, he kept his word.
Oh, wow. The timing is everything.
Oh, it's
as well.
essential, yes. And so, but he taught me how to think in a different way, like in a non-judgmental way, because even though I wasn't a social worker, I feel like what I experienced in life, I always judge. I didn't have the capacity to not judge, right? I needed to judge the people that I was hanging with. I needed to judge, you know,
everything, all the stuff that had happened,
yes,
where you felt like you were just trusting and letting things go, then all that happened. So yeah.
And so he taught me how to have compassion.
Right.
He taught me how to be curious about the tragedies that people found themselves in.
The whys, right?
Yes. But 6 months after getting there, he left.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he got a promotion. He took another job that was, you know, a bigger position for him. And then it was another young lady, a black sister. Her name was Kimberly Robertson. She became my supervisor. I learned a lot under her tutelage, and I also learned a lot under Bentley Eskridge. She got a new name now, but she's married. I don't know what
Okay.
but they were like people that I looked up to.
Okay.
And it was crazy because they all were talking about, well, Kim was already doing entrepreneurship. Like she had her own private practice. But I was so disconnected from myself that I didn't see myself having the same thing that they had. But I just believe sometimes when we stay in situations longer than we're supposed to, God agitate us or aggravate
you gotta
us.
get sick and tired of being sick and tired.
And so I was at this job, I won't say it. But I was at this job where they was at. And if you know them, you know where they was at. And what happened was, I had a plot. So Bentley had left, and then there was another person that was in line to get the position, but she didn't want it. And I had experience as being director, you know, being a supervisor, but didn't want that because I had stuff that was going on, and I just didn't have the patience to deal with people. But COVID had hit, and I was like, I ain't going back, because we used to go to people's house. I was like, I ain't going back in nobody's house. I'm not going back in nobody's house. I don't know how we gonna work this out, but I'm not going back in nobody's house. And so they had a supervisor's position that was open, but they also had a director's position open. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna just apply and see what happens. So they didn't go with me. They went with the other.
Okay. For both?
No, they went with me for the supervisor, but they went from outside with the other.
The director. Okay.
And so, and it just wasn't a good fit for me. And not because he was other, because Bill was. He lacked compassion and he lacked self-awareness. And at the time, March the 9th, my grandson he was murdered. He was walking down the street with his cousin, and they just opened fire, and he died instantly. And I never forget that I was trying to be present at work, you know, like trying to deal with that, and he kept calling me about something that I felt like really wasn't important. And he was like, oh, well, it needs to get done today. Okay, well, it's not. I don't know what to tell y'all. But I'm gonna take care of myself. And I feel like this was the first time that I started learning how to advocate for myself. And so I went out on leave. And I just was like, I can't work in a place where I don't feel valued and appreciated.
I know what you mean.
And when you're not even human enough to extend grace, right, during such a tragedy
time, in your life,
and expect you to come back. You get 3 days of bereavement. You better come back.
Was that even possible? Right,
absolutely. And so it was just a combination of all of those things that. So I started a nonprofit, but what I realized, in order to offer my services under the nonprofit, I needed to be licensed and I needed to be credentialed with insurance companies. And I was neither. I had taken a test, I feel like at this point 2 times, and failed it. So that story, I was telling myself like, oh my God, like maybe those doubts,
they took you back to that time with the teaching and stuff like that.
They did, but this time I said, I'm not walking away from my career. I'm a buckle down, I'm a persevere. I don't care how many times I had to take this test, I'm going to pass this exam. And the first time I took the exam, little sidebar, I didn't study or anything, and I didn't pass by 11. And so I told myself, if you study, you'll be good, right? Well, honey, that was not you. So I had to take the test 5 times. But what I realized, I wouldn't change none of it. Because I used to think that I was a visual learner. But after the 4th time, I got a tutor. and she did an assessment of me to only discover that I'm an auditory learner.
Okay.
And so she also said, well, you should ask for special accommodations.
So that means that you need to hear it.
No, but that ain't even how I took it. I thought about it as a bus, and then she trying to say I'm slow. So I was like, what?
So it's okay to be able to look at it.
You telling me
I
I
need
need to hear?
So what she told me was, that's how I discovered I was an auditory learner. She was like, no, if you ask for special accommodations, you'll be in a room by yourself. And then you can read the questions out loud, because I noticed when you read them out loud, you understand them. And so I said, oh, okay. And so the other thing she taught me, I never developed test taking skills. And so she taught me how to do a process of elimination.
Okay.
But the only way I can do that if I understood the content, because I was trying to take the test based off memory. And she was like, no, you got to understand the
You
content.
have to literally understand the
Yes.
meanings and things like that.
Yeah.
Like, I get it.
And then she told me, think of it as a history test of what was going on during this time and who they was talking to. And once she told me that, it was like the light clicked. And so after the 5th time, I passed the test. So I wanted to, I didn't want to get credentialed at first. I was like, I'm not doing that as a headache. But this was all because I thought I was not capable of doing it. And so I went I went the easy way and did the LLC. And the first name I was trying to do was The Journey from Within. And that didn't work. And then it was The Journey. It just kept playing around. And then my daughter, who always comes through out of nowhere, she was like, Mom, I think you should call it Journey from Within. And I was like, well, let me go see. And they didn't have it. It wasn't taken. So that's kind of how the LLC got started. And I'm a how do you say it? A toddler, I guess. Infant? So this January the 8th was a year.
Okay.
And so thank you. And I started out virtual, and then I got space. But it was important to me that people who look like me and who've been through what I've been through, or at least some of what I've been through, had somebody who had done the work and that can create a safe space that they can share, right? Because my job is to make people think. It's not all about, because I feel like you're the expert on your life. You know what you've been through. I'm not here to tell you you was wrong for doing this, or 9 times out of 10 we were surviving.
Surviving.
Based off of the circumstances that,
That's so true.
we were presented. Do it always make us look our best? Absolutely not. But can we learn from it? Yes, we can. Can we grow from it? Yes, we can. Because what I've learned is that what I didn't get as a child, the adult me get to nurture that little girl that's inside of me. And I just want to offer the same experience to the people that God sends my way, because I believe everybody that comes, God sent them for a reason. And so that's how the Journey from Within started. And then I realized, like, oh, you're not too bad at this. You could help some more people, so you might want to go back and look at that nonprofit and try to start getting credentialed at some insurance companies, because your people don't have money, right? Like you're gonna make it, but you don't have to. You got in it for them, so don't forget you came out of the fire. Make sure you go back and get those ones that's still there. And so I don't know how many. Do you know how many we credential with now? It's a few. Insurance company. And the thing is so moving is because I did the applications myself. And I didn't think I was capable.
All the work.
I did everything by the grace of God myself. And my girlfriend, Bentley, she kept saying, you do one. She said it's not hard, it's tedious. It's not hard. And I was like, well, she's smart. Where did I But I did the first one, which was Magellan. And that's kind of like a state one. It is a state one, but in the county.
What do you mean? You getting licensed with them?
So I'm already licensed.
Okay.
But because I'm licensed, I'm credentialed. So I sit on the panels of insurance companies.
Okay.
So when people, 8. So it's 8.
8. Okay.
So when people are looking, thank you, for a therapist through their insurance,
Okay.
I come up.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yes. So I'm credentialed with Independence Blue Cross, Cigna, Magellan, Aetna.
I say because most people don't do Aetna.
Magellan. It's a couple of them.
Okay.
And yeah, and so the journey still continues.
Yes, absolutely.
So you said a couple things that is the beauty of the Philly Culture Podcast, right? Because a big part of why we do the Philly Culture Podcast is just to show the exposure of we can go through some things in our lives, some trials, some tribulations, but we have resilience, we have grit. And you talked a lot about mentorships and being in different programs and these people, like the cheerleading program you with, still being in your life. And we always hear how, nobody wanted to help me, nobody wanted to show me the way. But when you really sit down and listen to your story, 9 times out of 10 there was. It might not have been your mom, it might not have been your dad, it might not have been those direct people that we thought it was supposed to be, but it might have been somebody in your job, in your career, or in your life that put you in a position to make you see something in yourself for you to now have 8 credentials. And then it's never too late.
Never too late.
It's never too late. Right. And then the things that we are creating culture is the things that we know that we're missing in our community.
Absolutely.
And the Philly Culture Podcast, we just want to bring light to these different things happening in our city because there are so many people that saw the need and now are creating different spaces for you to get the resources, the tools, and have unlimited access to it. By her having these credentials and 8 different insurance companies, it expands her reach of who she can serve. So I commend you for doing the work, and not giving up on yourself, because sometimes that's what the journey look like. We come from these different neighborhoods and we think that we don't have the opportunity to keep fighting, to keep going, to be something different, to be in jail and be a baby mom and have these different experiences and making these poor decisions. That it's never too late. Like your story, you said the pandemic. I was like, oh shit.
Right, me too. Honestly, I'm thinking, 10 years back, but that's amazing, right? That
and that's the beauty of
it, right?
Yeah, trying to amplify these stories and using this platform to just show that, you can grow up in this city and you can be something. Don't think that your past determines your future and the things that you went through and you go through is going to stop you. And it's definitely the city of brotherly love, sister.
For sure. But I'm from the hood, though. And I don't deny that. Okay, I do not deny that. I love being black. I love being from the hood. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change my story because my story and my experience, all of it has made me who I am.
Definitely, absolutely.
And that's the Philly culture for you, okay? We gonna claim where we from. I'm from the Bronx. I know what you're talking about.
I'm from North Philly. I grew up down 11 Philly High. I used to catch the 54 and the 23, all that, all the time. And we was just talking last time about how we got that edge. Everybody in Philly got that little edge, regardless of how professional you is. We can go from here, we can go to there.
Be versatile.
Right, so many ways. So definitely,
and that's what makes us a hustler.
Right.
But growing up in Philly, like I went to Germantown. And it was riots and it was all types of stuff, but we had different programs and different opportunities. Now you had to navigate to get to that class I went to the Philadelphia public school. I graduated from the Philadelphia school, and people talk about that, but so many people in Philly are doing some dope, amazing things that you hear this negative narrative about the city of Philadelphia, but when you really look at it, we some hustlers and we out here doing some phenomenal things. And I don't want the city to sleep on us, and I don't want our kids to see
the generation to miss it,
to miss that and not see that there is so many different opportunities. Like you said, working with that lady and not even knowing what entrepreneurship was, and here you are. Killing the game, killing the game, and even like when you was talking about the nonprofits and stuff like that, how people get in the game and we don't really know. We heard somebody say, we heard somebody talk about it, but the willingness to do the work so that you can serve the most of people.
Worth it.
It really is worth it. It really is.
So tell people where we can find you, your IG.
Okay, so I'm getting better with this. So my Instagram is Journey from Within 21.
And my Instagram for the Blended Journey is just that, the Blended Journey. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay.
So that's where you can find me.
Okay. Do you have anything coming up? Any projects you're working on?
I do have something that I'm working on. It's a girls empowerment event that I'm working on. But one thing that I do, I go in schools, and I know the young black men are not going to talk to me. So I created this mentorship, right, so that they can talk to some black men that's not too far removed from them, that they have a shared experience, because they're not going to come talk to me about their mental health. But what people don't know is that when we heal from trauma, it's not necessary. Everybody not going to come to a therapist. Everybody don't need it. Can everybody benefit from it? Absolutely. But it takes one loving person for a person to be able to heal from what they've been through.
Just be able to process some stuff, right?
So I'm working on trying to get into more schools with that program to help the young men, because our young men, they need our help.
Definitely.
But I know it's not me they need. Like I'm the one to bring them what they need. Right. The girls, they need us too. So I want to create a space where they can come and just be loved on. Right? Just to be loved on. So and I'm going to be doing something soon with blended families. My husband and I. Because I think the challenges that blended families experience are unique. It's not the same as a nuclear family, but they approach it. Everybody approaches it like it's a one size fit all. No, we both came into the relationship with children, so that's already different from a nuclear family.
I'm dealing with that now. So.
It's real. It is real.
My daughter's 24 and my boyfriend's son is 3 and his daughter's 11. So I'm out of that stage of parenting, and I'm with him, and now I have to. So even though my daughter's 24, it's still blended.
It's still blended.
So it's definitely a challenge.
It is. And then when we're challenged, we go back to what's familiar.
Right.
And what's familiar is what I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we
So
commend you, and definitely look forward to hearing and seeing more from you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you all for tuning in to the Philly Culture Podcast. You can find us on all streaming platforms. This is episode, I don't know, I'm being honest with you.
12.
That ain't good.
No.
Oh, all right. Sorry. But that's good, though, because we're going to keep bringing y'all more and more guests here at the Philly Culture Podcast. This is where we talk about our upbringing in the city of Philly and how it has birthed our hustle. So stay tuned for more episodes from the Philly Culture Podcast. Have a great evening, everybody.